Okay, we're live. Keep talking.
Yeah, so one question with bonding. I'm looking at the Reichel's thing. So let's say I bond some atoms, but I'm not in, I don't have enough that I would become a validator. So then that just goes into some list, and once other people delegate to me, so they can still delegate to me even though I'm not a validator, and then once the threshold is reached, I become a validator, or how does that work?
Wait, Sunny, do you know the answer?
Sorry, what was the question again?
So we have the top 100, let's say, who are validators, right?
Yeah.
And now let's say I have 0.1% of atoms. I want to become a validator. So I bond those atoms, but I'm not a I don't have enough to be a validator. So so does that mean the network keeps a list of everyone who has bonded atoms? And then there's sort of like, let's say, a binary value for each, okay, validator, not validator. And let's say I'm below that, somebody delegates to me, I'm above that, and now I all of a sudden become a validator. So like, what's the process?
Rigel knows this part better, but basically, like, you implement.
Okay.
So basically, the idea is you have like a waiting pool of validators who aren't like official validators yet, and people can like commit to delegating to them. And so if the commitments become high enough, then they'll automatically be redelegated to that validator once he enters the top 100.
Can you commit to several different validator candidates at the same time?
No, you could only have one commitment at a time because it needs to be instantly rebonded if it happens. There's two options. There's an issue that's open for this under Gaia or crypto economics. I can link to you later. But like, yeah, so there's what Sunny just explained, but like it's like a kind of an instant transaction. So you would be limited, like each atom you could only intend to send to one of the validators. But optionally as well, there's this other idea that's in development, which is like you could sub-delegate, right? So you could I could delegate to you, Brian, but then even if you weren't a validator, you would actually be validating to other people. So I would still be getting commission from the people that you chose to delegate to. But as soon as you became large enough to actually enter the pool of top 100, then you would enter the pool of top 100, and I would just be delegating to you. If you kind of get that.
Wait, okay.
I didn't get that.
Okay, this isn't a complete idea, but the premise is somebody who wants to be a validator can accept delegations, but like as a delegator, you want to always be receiving commission no matter what. So it's too bad, so sad for the people who aren't in the top 100, right? So the idea is that if you're not in the top 100 yet, you can accept delegations, but then you yourself can delegate the pool of all the resources that have been given to you to the actual validators, so that the people who are delegating to you can still get resources from who you've chosen to delegate to. So it's like a sub-delegation. It's kind of complicated. I'm not sure if
it's very cool. It reminds me of liquid democracy a little bit. But if I have enough delegated atoms, me as a delegator, do I automatically become a validator, or do I have to sign up for it?
No, you would have to become a validator automatically.
So that means that if I want to put someone into the delegator position, even though he doesn't want to be, and I have enough atoms to do that, I can do that, right?
Yes.
Sorry, say that again.
So let's say Adrian doesn't want to become a validator.
So I'm a random address.
Delegating all my atoms to him for validation. Then he becomes automatically a validator, even if he doesn't choose to be.
No. You have to be a validator. You have to declare yourself as a validator before accepting any delegation. So if you're sub-delegating, if you want to be a validator, that's the only time when you could sub-delegate.
Okay.
That's
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that also means as a validator or as a validator candidate, kind of, you need to be ready because you don't know when you even actually become a validator.
Yeah.
So you should be ready like at any time to like start signing blocks.
I think you have to be running a node to do this. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could actually probably predict like, unless there's like huge whales that start delegating to you, but like most likely your stake will slowly increase. You can kind of predict at roughly which point you'll become a validator.
No, but you still need a support if a whale was to come in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so if I see this correctly, from a validator perspective, the risk is you need to set up an infrastructure. You need to be ready to validate, and then you can accept delegated atoms to even build up your own set of atoms to become a validator. So you can have verbal agreements that, hey, I have enough atoms for you to become a validator, but if you want to do it with small, I'm a community validator, then you have to put in the risk of setting up the whole infrastructure before you can actually understand if you're going to have enough atoms to become a validator, right?
Or you start with shitty infrastructure and you just take a larger risk.
And hope for it, yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to state how it works. Is this a correct assumption of how it works?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Rigel, when we talked with Jay about this instant rebonding,
Yeah.
Sunny mentioned an interesting point, like what prevents someone from just being in unbonding at all times?
Oh, okay. It's really simple. So like you are still slashable when you're unbonding. So like I mentioned this to Sunny. Like the whole me and Jay and Adrian got together and we were just like, I was just trying to flesh out like all the possibilities of what happens during slashing with like the double slash ability. And at the end of the day, it was just kind of like, this doesn't fucking make any sense. We just need to go back to the, like, this was just kind of like a crazy idea that Jay had a while ago where you could be double slashable, but it just makes so much more sense to just be single slashable. And I think that was, Jay really got at the end of that conversation.
What does it mean to be double slashable?
The double slash ability had to do with this concept that we'd been kicking around. We hadn't really come to a full conclusion whether it was safe or not, but there were definitely some concerns. And it was like when you redelegate, you have vote. You're still slashable by your old validator, but your validation power immediately goes to the new validator. So in that sense, yeah. So that was double slashable because you're slashable by the old validator and the new validator.
Okay.
But instead of doing that, we decided in that evening that it made a lot more sense to just kind of go with the original plan that we had talked about with the economics group, right? Which was to when you want to rebond, you just have to enter the unbonding period where you'll still gain validator provisions as well as the fees, so you're not losing out. And then at the end of that unbonding period is when the voting power gets assigned. Now, the reason why you wouldn't want to be I mean, like it's actually doesn't really matter. Like you could choose to be in the unbonding period the entire time and like always just be active for one block every 3 weeks or whatever. And that's fine because what that actually means is that your voting power isn't contributing to any malicious behavior. However, you're still slashable. So like the person that you're unbonding from, the person that you're unbonding from, even if you choose, even if your voting power hasn't contributed to the malicious activity, you're still slashable by their mistakes during that 3 week period. Yeah. So that's why, like, it's like great. Like, it doesn't matter. You can be unbonding all the time because you have less voting power, so you can't.
But that means that there's less voting power in the system at any given time. Also,
well, yes. So as a delegator, you now start losing out on like you can't vote anymore if you're unbonding all the time. So as a delegator, there actually is an advantage now to be always bonded.
Yeah, it's minor.
By voting, sorry, I meant like voting in consensus, not governance.
Right.
So this is like, I like the fact that the redelegation allows you to automatically give certain validators more, like, so the problem is here, if you, let's say you want to give another validator more voting power, right? You actually have to wait the entire unbonding period, which is a pretty long time.
That's fine, also, I think that's an important constraint.
Also, I think this is like, so, I mean, Raju, the reason you gave me was that it's like more, like it makes more, like it's easier to explain. I think this is actually harder to explain because now we have to explain that there's a difference between voting power and like what the relationship between voting power, rewards, and slashability is.
Sonny, it's not because it's easier to explain, it's because it's a lot safer than the double slashability. There's a lot of confusion as to like how the reorg actually is going to happen under like all these unusual scenarios with the double slashability, and it kind of becomes a huge headache.
This removes a lot of the edge cases around this.
What do you mean? Like, what kind of edge cases?
There's so many edge cases. Okay, so like consider that if you're a validator, your old validator, you've rebonded your old delegator, your old validator gets slashed for something, and then a double spend happens, but then one happens only after the other. Like, you kind of see where I'm, because both you need to get like slashed twice, and then there's the possibility of the nothing at stake issue.
No, you don't need to get slashed twice. Like, that's the thing. Like, you know, if there's one fork or two forks or three forks, like on all of them, the minimum that we need to slash is 33%. It doesn't matter. And the thing is, like, you redelegating your stake is no different than the same validator just doing multiple forks before he gets slashed. It just changes which validator is going to be slashed.
I don't think it's that simple. Like, I think that it may be possible that it is safe, but when we were talking about it before, it seemed like extremely complex when we started outlining a few scenarios. And if it's something that you're like really adamant on, I think you should construct a document that states like all the different possible scenarios under the rebond and exactly how the reorg happens. But
by reorg, do you mean we have to figure out how to decide which fork to continue on?
It's more complicated than that, because what happens is that like once, like if there's a double spend, for instance, right? Like certain transactions become invalid, and then you have to run through the list of the transactions that have happened after that, because there's going to be valid transactions in that list, but some of them aren't going to be valid. So like it's really easy.
Yeah, completely. Like once we have a fork, this is a doomsday scenario, and we have to like halt everything and figure out like through like human means what to do.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying is like tell me how, because I understand if there's only one slashable train, it's actually very simple. Right?
There could be multiple slashable trains even if you don't allow that, because if let's say it takes 10 blocks for a fraud proof to be submitted, right? In that time, one validator can still create 10 forks on each block.
Yeah, but
you have to take 2 to the end. Yeah.
No. Well, I know, I agree. Like that can happen. But what happens is you just run through the blockchain and you determine the invalid transactions. You correct them as invalid transactions, and then you run through the valid transactions after that on top of the corrected. Like that's how the reorg happens.
So that's how. But a reorg is more about just invalid transactions, right? It's like about. So how are you defining invalid transactions?
Like somebody signed that it was like somebody signed a double spend, for instance, right? So they said that you know there were coins here to send when they weren't, for instance.
No, but the point is how a fork works is you sign one valid transaction on one block on one side and then another valid one on another side. There's no double spend within a single block. Otherwise, no full node would ever accept that. Like a double spend is about signing 2 completely valid independent blocks.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
So like that doesn't really relate to like finding.
There's other weird things though. Like I mean, like you could, if you had 2/3, then you could just sign whatever you want.
2/3 is a scenario though, like under which all our assumptions go out the window anyway.
Yeah. Also, even with 2/3, you can't sign invalid blocks because you have to remember that a full node will never accept an invalid block.
Well, unless they're malicious.
Who?
A malicious validator could accept invalid blocks
and sign those.
Yeah. Fine, yeah, that's fine. But I'm saying I'm saying even in the case of a 2/3 like malicious validators, right? They still can't do anything malicious. They still can't do anything like minting fake atoms.
Of course they can.
Double. No, because no one will accept it.
Literally whatever they want to. They can modify.
No, they can sign it. They can sign it, but the whole point is that the protocol the full nodes have to accept it.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they accept it?
Why wouldn't they? Because it's against the protocol.
Yeah, I know. No,
it's like in Bitcoin, right? A miner can't just produce a block giving him 10 million Bitcoin because it's against the protocol.
Okay, check it out, Sunny. It's totally different than Bitcoin because what can happen is that somebody can all the malicious validators could just choose to modify the protocol to do something arbitrary, and since there's 2/3 of them, then they could just push it through. But
through what governance?
No, they could just say that they could sign a block that had arbitrary rules that they've decided, that they've implemented in the.
No, but a full node does not. A full node won't accept that because full node should only update the protocol if it's gone through proper governance.
But with 2/3 majority in the voting, I can also vote on governance.
Yes. You can vote on governance, but the whole point, the beauty of that is that because people can see what's going through governance, they can say, "Oh, this governance system is screwed up or hard fork."
Okay, hard fork.
You can hard fork at the governance point before the actual enactment of the policy.
I think that it would be really easy to prove that there were some fake blocks going through because all you'd need to do is run it with the with the old protocol and see the shit just didn't add up. Mm-hmm. But I'm still saying I think the block would still technically get accepted by the blockchain if 2/3 were and then we definitely need a fork.
It will get accepted.
Wait, but what was the original? Let's recap back to the original issue.
So the original issue is just that I think it's just a lot simpler and it makes a lot more sense to not allow to not have instant rebonding that allows for double slashability. That was kind of it.
Totally agree. Yeah, so I think the main reason for that actually is that, simplicity. It's very easy to reason about what happens because we're not in this weird state where now we're slashable by 2 people.
I think it's harder to reason about because now voting power is not equal to mining rewards.
It's really simple because it's okay that the voting power is not equal to the mining rewards, because the mining rewards are still equal to the total slashability of the validator. So if you're a validator, you've got less voting power, but you still do some stupid shit. There's still more at stake. And on top of that, as a validator, the commission that you're receiving is actually the commission on the fees which the entire all your delegators are receiving, which includes those who are unbonding and still receiving fees. So you're still as a validator, it's not
sure.
You're still
I agree. I agree that model is safe. I'm just saying that I think double slashability is also safe and that it's actually better than the single slashability model because you get this instant redelegation of voting power.
I think that it's okay. I think
especially because consider this, right? Let's say a validator is down a lot, you as a delegator are seeing that your validator is super he's just not live very often, right? You want to actually be able to move your voting power to someone else. But here you'd be required to wait an entire unbonding period in order to be able to do that.
I mean, I feel you should really be, as a delegator, I would hedge against many different validators. First of all, so I wouldn't be super bummed.
No, but also you should be able. any down validators, delegators should be able to instantly move their voting power to someone else.
I agree.
I don't think so. No, you should be punished. Like if your validator goes down, you as a delegate also should get punished for that.
No. You get punished for anything that's been going on. Like he's been down, but you don't want you're like, all right, this validator is going to get punished. Like,
yeah, like if you delegate to validate and the validator goes down, you did a shit job at due diligence. You should get punished for also the validator being down.
No, of course no. Why would that be the case? Like this is the validator's problem. He's a good validator. It just so happens that there's a power outage where he is. So like you just need to.
You should have known that.
He didn't have Petro backup.
What?
Fuck him.
No.
He didn't have backup power.
I don't see why you shouldn't allow a delegator to redelegate.
No, okay.
It is more complex from the implementation side.
I think it's possible that it might be safe, but I think the implementation is, as Adrian says, is going to be much more complicated, especially like under like any kind of like a, there can be scenarios that aren't even doomsday scenarios that things will get really fucking complicated if two people are just slashed, if a delegator is slashed by two validators and it just happens to be over, there's total slashable amount. And I think we should move forward with the simple scenario, and then over time flesh out like a really intense specification as to how double bonding may or may not be safe in all the different scenarios and how they would react.
This is one of those nice things for in 6 months.
I think it is. Yeah, I think this is an in 6 month scenario.
Can I ask something?
So what's up?
If I'm a validator, I have 50% of the atoms bonded that are mine and 50% coming from delegators. And my power goes out, I get slashed on the network. Say 5% of my atoms get slashed.
Yeah.
Which 5%?
It would be 5% equally distributed between the validators' atoms and the delegators' atoms.
So you'd lose 2.5, and the delegators lose 2.5 too.
Or everybody loses. Yeah, no, that's right.
Or everybody uses 5%. That's what you were going to say, right?
Everybody loses 5% of their own pool, but in total, that's still 5%.
Yeah.
Yes, which makes sense. So that means that if the power goes out, and one of the delegators want to rebond, so I want to take it away from those guys because they're down and I don't know when they're going to be up. What can I unbound? So if as time goes on, that pool of atoms are going to be slashed more and more, right?
No, so if there's a limited amount of slashability, like this is what we talked about with availability before, is that like you kind of, there's small penalties depending on how far you are, and then after a certain amount of time, it's just like the whole validator gets unbonded and there's a little slash applied, but that's it. So it's not like you keep on you keep on losing money.
So if Puerto Rico goes down, a validator in Puerto Rico will not lose its entire atom stake. They just lose a small bit.
Well, the validator will, because if we unbound their atoms, then he's not a validator anymore.
No, but so the unbonding doesn't automatically unbond your delegates. So if you're a validator, like let's say I'm a validator and 3 people are delegating to me, I go down after, I don't know, some X amount of time, I get unbonded by the system to keep the validator set healthy. So I get unbonded and all my delegators get unbonded, but they don't get unbonded from myself as a validator. So once I come back online, with all the delegators still delegating the atoms to me.
But they're not locked to you during that period. So like somebody
they can still unbond.
I can redelegate to someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that also mean that me delegating to anyone doesn't automatically mean that I also bonded my atoms?
Say that again?
No.
If I'm just delegating to someone, let's say a candidate, that doesn't mean that I bonded my atoms. It only means I delegated it.
Right. Because the validator could also be, or the party that you're delegating to may not even be above the threshold, right? So you're not bonded in that scenario either.
That's a really good point. So if you're validating to somebody who is not yet a validator, your unbonding period should be instantaneous.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you should be able to switch to any other validator at any time, right?
Yeah, because there's nothing that's slashable because you're not
Yeah.
validated. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And the same thing when a validator goes down, your atoms are already they get unbonded after a timeout period, which means
you'd still have to wait at least the 3 weeks unbonding period.
Yeah, okay, but check this out. So like you can, if you're a validator, so the whole thing is still slashable for that 3 week period, even though they're not validating, just in case something, retroactively discovered. But, if during that unbonding period of 3 weeks, you can choose to opt out and just continue the unbonding period to your personal account or to some other validator. You don't have to wait that full 3 weeks to initiate that process. But then once the whole thing is unbonded, but you still have to call a transaction to retrieve it, but it's instantaneous. Yeah.
So do we have a workflow that shows us what kind of state an atom can be in? Because it seems to me that it can be unbonded, it can be delegated and bonded, delegated and unbonded, but there are two different versions of that, depending on if the validator went down or if the validator is not a validator yet. So it seems that we have multiple states. It would be nice to have a workflow around that.
This is all outlined in the Gaia spec, but I didn't actually make a diagram. So maybe I could make a diagram. That sounds like a good idea.
I would love that. That would help me tremendously.
Yeah.
Okay, just one quick question as well. This would also require two different kinds of unbonding periods, right? One for unbonding to another, one for rebonding, and one for unbonding to liquidity.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, this is in the it's in the spec. Well, we use the same command, but it's it's recognized as two different types of transactions. If you're unbonding from something that's in the process of unbonding.
Yeah. If you're on Adrian, because if you're unbonding to liquidity, you should not be getting rewards for that.
This is an interesting question.
Then there's definitely not an incentive to remain bonded.
Yeah, I think we didn't really talk about that when we talked about it with Jay, right? We just said let's go back to this original idea that it's okay. But what we had originally all thought was a good idea, which I just want to confirm that we still agree on this, is that if you're unbonding to complete liquidity, that you don't receive fees, but you're still you don't receive any fees or delegation provisions, right? Only if you're rebonding, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, true. Yeah, we need that. Otherwise, everyone will be unbonding.
Incentivize just to incentivize people to stay bonded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't receive fees and you don't receive the block reward either.
You don't. Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
If you're unbonding to complete liquidity. Yeah.
Wait. So there's different types of unbonding.
Well, no. There's redelegating, right? Which means that you're kind of unbonding and then instantaneously getting attached to a different validator. In which case, during that whole unbonding period, you would receive the fees and reward.
So essentially, you have an unbonding transaction, and that unbonding transaction has a field that either says it goes to a different validator or to normal account.
Right, and if you say different validator, then that means there is no of this clock. Okay, this much time until I'm liquid and I'm not slashable anymore. So that only starts when you say, okay, I want to completely unbond. So they're really totally different things, right? In the redelegation case, you remain fully bonded at all times.
Exactly, and that's why you get.
So maybe it should be a different word for that than unbonding.
Thank you. Exactly what I was going to say.
It's redelegated. So you're in the let's just call it you're in the queue. You're in the hopper.
Would it another idea, just for clarification, would it make sense to come up with a dictionary that defines each of these words to make sure that we think the same thing around it?
Okay,
so I'll be I'll be kind of doing this as part of the paper, because I kind of do have to define everything. So
let's have a glossary in the paper essentially.
Glossary, that's the word. Yeah. But because I heard bonding, unbonding. Unbonding has two meanings. Rebonding is not a bonding plus, not an unbonding plus a bonding.
Rebonding
So
doesn't
yeah, so it doesn't exist. Okay, fair enough.
Yes,
So
you unbond
so-
to a different type of address.
no. Have a word for this. I don't mind what it is. Just have a word for this. If you want to define something different, then define it.
I mean, rebonding.
May I have a
Rebonding.
question?
Redelegating, no?
That's what it is. Yeah, you're redelegating. There's unbond, redelegate.
Right. Totally different thing.
So yeah, but what happens when I'm trying to redelegate to someone who's not a validator yet, just a candidate?
Good question.
You're unbond. Then you're unbond. That's actually an unbond. I'm trying to break it to you because you're not going to someplace that's that is
No.
But what happens if that candidate is right now also delegating to another validator?
So the candidate we haven't implemented, and we've decided not to implement for the MVP
Thank God. Okay, good.
any of the redelegation or the intention to delegate. It's just people are going to have to take losses to bring somebody new into the validator set.
But Rachel, so I think if you do it like this, right? So if you redelegate to somebody who's not yet a validator because their atoms aren't they aren't above the threshold,
yeah,
and then you're not earning rewards there, but if you redelegate to somebody else, you do earn rewards. Then like it makes it harder for new validators to come in. So wouldn't it be better if you redelegate to somebody who's not yet a validator, you still earn rewards, but at the end of that period, of that 3-week period, so when you have now actually redelegated to that one, it's just you still have that unbonding period, right? So they're not liquid.
Oh.
Does that make sense? So if you like delegate to some,
I don't think it makes sense because I think that if somebody is like, especially during the initial period of this, like people are going to want, like if I have liquid atoms, like, okay, we can't differentiate between bonding atoms to a candidate as like some of the bonded atoms are liquid and some of them are not liquid. I don't think that makes sense. I think we need one, like either they are liquid or they are illiquid when you're bonded to a candidate. We just have to make a choice on that. And yeah. I don't think it makes sense because if I'm bonding liquid atoms to like a candidate, then I should be able to move them to a different candidate at my whim because nothing is actually at stake yet, right?
So it seems that those atoms are in yet another state compared to anything else. If we,
no. By the way,
I want to
like,
extend
this
the
is
model.
totally outside of the scope of the MVP, like of the launch product. This is like 6 months down the road again.
No, this is the launch. What do you mean, Adrian?
Wait, what? Wait, so then what happens? So I now delegate to a candidate, and that candidate can now delegate to an actual validator?
No, that's not. That's 6 months.
Oh, yes, that's what I was saying. Okay, good. Because that means the atoms are not in a different state.
Yeah,
unless we choose to do it, but
no, like initially there won't be such a high contention yet for the top 100 spots.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be fine for 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true. It can be a concern though, right? Because if you maybe it's not an immediate concern at launch. I agree. I mean, if it's too complicated, maybe it doesn't make sense to focus on that. But otherwise, it can create a big barrier of entry for new validators.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
I agree, and I think that this is one of the most important things to implement after launch.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I think that there's a huge problem for new candidates joining the validator set because everybody is just incentivized to bond to somebody where they're going to make money. They don't want to have to bond to somebody who they're not going to make money from, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I agree. Maybe at launch it's not a critical thing.
But shortly after it will be.
Shortly after, yeah.
All right. Maya's question was, what is the detection mechanism for detecting when a validator goes down? A validator hasn't signed any block in the last 100 blocks, for example.
Yeah.
I think the one we decided on Retreat is that over a 1-day window, if they haven't signed more than, if they've signed less than 33% of them.
So if there's a 66% cartel, so 66% cartel can censor anything they want, really, because like 66% of the cartel, they can make progress on the chain without needing any of the signatures of the rest of the 30.
A 66% cartel can do whatever the fuck they want, really.
So,
well, no, they can censor whatever they want.
67.
67.
2/3.
So I mean, if there's going to be any detection mechanism for detecting like a validator has gone down, isn't that abusable by a 67% cartel to basically get the stake of those small validators slashed?
Yeah, this is called the Tendermint is two dudes problem. Yeah, it is.
Tendermint is two dudes.
Tendermint is two dudes. Basically, what happens is I'll make a 67% cartel in order to get 33% people slashed, and once those 33% of people are gone, then I'll make a new 2/3 cartel within that original 67, get another like 1/3 slashed again, and then keep repeating until it just like comes down to two dudes. There's two people left at the end.
So that's why the initial validator set is so important, to be trustworthy and not trying to undermine each other, right?
No, I mean, this is just a problem no matter what, in which validator set. If you have a 67%, it's actually like, if you allow for cartels to form, it's not like game theoretically safe.
Yeah, but like if you, the same thing will apply to most other blockchains as well.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Like if in
I don't think
Bitcoin,
that's a good enough reason.
If in Bitcoin I can form a 2/3 cartel, I first of all can censor all the other blocks, all the other miners, so they will never receive block rewards anymore.
Right.
And then I can just bleed them dry as well. It's the same problem.
No, it's not.
Well, Bitcoin's 50%.
No, it's not.
If you have 51%, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, 50.
I don't know, but you can't keep, no, it's not the same problem because in Bitcoin, the people don't get slashed. And so you don't kick out the 1/3.
Well, you get slashed in a different way. You spend electricity without earning returns.
Right, but then you can like come back into the system then.
Unless you go back. Yeah, fair enough.
But guys, I don't think that's still the same problem. The sheer size of Bitcoin is its own safety, whereas we won't have the same with 100 validators.
But yeah, but I mean, actually, it is similar. I agree, Adrian, right? Because here, I mean, even if you have this thing of, okay, 67% can basically maybe fake that some minority of validators, that they can pretend that they're down when they're not actually down by just excluding their signatures in the block. And then what happens? Well, they maybe lose a little bit of stake, but primarily they just get unbonded. And then they don't earn returns, which is the exact same thing that you can do in Bitcoin, right? If you say, if a majority says, okay, we're just not going to include any blocks, so those people may work, spend electricity, but they don't earn block rewards and fees.
Yeah. By the way, also, so there's a disincentive for cartels, like for people to censor each other. Since if you censor someone and you don't include, so like you get more rewards if you include more signatures for a given block.
Yeah.
So like that's a small.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. So like if you only include 2/3 of signatures, then you get less reward. Then you get like the standard, and if you include up to 100, then you get more. Oh yeah, Tendermint is two dudes. So it's cartel. Like, but in general, like if you manage to form a 2/3 cartel, like all bets are really off.
Yeah, we're not worried
to
about
light client.
Yeah. That's like, we have to fork. If there's a 2/3 cartel, then Cosmos forks.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it doesn't make, I mean, maybe one should think about these scenarios a little bit, but I don't think it should be a big concern.
Oh no, this is totally, like, this should totally be research for us, since like can we fix
Yeah, it should
this
be
in 2
research,
years?
but I mean, even in Bitcoin, right? If you assume like, okay, 30% malicious miners, they can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's not generally, it's not a problem, right? I think it may be more problematic, if even a small minority of validators can get some advantage and be more profitable than others by like doing something that you don't need 2/3, right?
There was a great idea.
Like the selfish mining thing in Bitcoin, right? That's, I think, from 25% of miners can already basically be more profitable by doing that. And that's much more likely than 2/3. Or even 51%.
So I think there was a better way of handling all this. I don't know if that got included in the proposal or not. The way I think it was described to me was that you need to have a minimum amount of atoms to become a validator, but you should not go over a specific number of atoms as a validator, or else you might be slashed for that. Is that still in the proposal? Is that something that we're doing? No? Adrian is saying no.
No, I don't think so. Not that I know of.
No, we just we talked about doing the retreat, and let's keep the protocol simple in the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
okay. So if right now if I have $100 million and I start buying up atoms, I could actually become 2/3, right?
Sure. And then you're 2/3, and then you start fucking with the governance, and then you all notice, and then hard fork you out, and you wasted $100 million on now worthless thing.
I mean, the nice thing about something like Tendermint and Proof of Stake is that, if you want to buy 2/3 of the stake, well, you need to buy atoms, and then you create demand for atoms, so you drive up the price of atoms. So, 100 million, even if Tendermint, even if Cosmos isn't that successful, doesn't have a huge market cap. Let's say the market cap is 200 million. To buy 2/3 of the stake will probably cost you like $500 million, a huge amount.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to buy it. You don't have to buy it. You just have to bribe people who have it.
Yeah, but they know if you get more than 2/3, they're going to be the community is hard forking you.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, so I'm not so sure that the community is hard forking. If it's still a valid working environment, and it doesn't really, it only hurts the 1/3, not the whole community.
If the community is depending on a centralized entity, right, like some really huge parties, then people are gonna, I'll go to Cosmos Hub too, right?
Yeah, I'll hard fork in that case.
Yeah, I'm just
Ian Wright will hard fork.
Yeah, Adrian and I will make a hard fork, okay?
Cool.
But okay, so I think we're going into how social psychology here. So there's no point in that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then.
Explanation. That's another question, I think.
I'm not really sure what else there was to discuss right now.
21 days it will last to unbond.
Yeah.
And just answering questions on the live chat.
Oh, there's a live chat?
Yeah, this is streamed to YouTube.
Oh, no way. That's so cool.
Right, you didn't know.
Wait, where's the chat? Where's the live chat?
Yeah.
Are there people watching, Adrian? Is this what's happening? What?
No, 4 people by now.
4 people.
Well, it's growing exponentially.
Okay, cool. Yeah, next time let me know. Well, I guess I came late. Sorry.
So if you're in Hangouts, we're live streaming things.
Yeah, by the way, anybody who comes 1 minute late doesn't know that it's all live streamed.
Maybe one thing, I don't know if this is the right time to speak about this, but the idea that validators can basically set the limit on how many atoms can be delegated to them. So I think
talk about this.
Yeah. So I can see a few reasons why you'd want to do this. I mean, first of all, I may just feel like, okay, I have to set up, and I'm okay with managing a certain amount of risk, right? I have like a security level where I'm like, okay, I can manage this many atoms being delegated to me, but I don't want to have like a huge amount, so I can restrict it. It also makes it possible to basically say I'm just running a validator on my own. I don't want atoms delegated to me. I can just set the limit to however many atoms I have. And I think maybe the most important one is it allows validators to just voluntarily limit how much stake they control. So a validator can say, okay, 5% maximum or 7% maximum. So it's not protocol enforced. One doesn't have to use it, but one can. And of course, it can also mean that a certain like social consensus rises around this, so that I say I'm only gonna validate that self this much atoms, and then you could potentially have the community like exerting pressure. Okay, this validator is growing quickly, and it's like, hey, you need to set a limit, otherwise you're getting too big. A little bit like it happened in points where you had like ghash.io, and they were getting to like 50%, and then everybody was putting pressure on them, like, hey, increase the fees, like do this, like do that, or shut down the pool, get to like too much. And then if you don't have any mechanism, I mean, it seems messed up, right? Like somebody's a good validator, and then lots of people delegate to them. All of a sudden they're at like 5-10%. They're like, I don't want this, right? I don't want to all of a sudden have a majority of the network or have like 20% of the stake, right? So there should be a way that I can basically say no more atoms delegated to me.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the ability for the natural increase of decentralization by validators limiting their set, right? I think that was a really cool idea. That it could be seen as like a really responsible thing to set your limit at like 5%.
Exactly, yeah.
That would make people potentially want to delegate because like, oh, that's a good thing. Cool.
I guess,
is there any
I guess
reason you don't want it?
I mean, the only thing that I'm just sort of wondering about is, what are the rules around changing this limit?
What we could do is we could do something similar to the commission rate. I think that's fine. I think we really just want to have one limit, and you kind of have to, okay, so the commission rate, the idea is that like, okay, this is the commission rate you're starting with, and then you subscribe to a maximum commission rate change of like, 1% a week or whatever, like you get to choose per like a daily commission rate change. But then on top of that, you set like a hard maximum that like your commission rate could never, like the protocol won't let it ever go above 20% or whatever. And you could maybe do the same thing for the hard cap, but I kind of think that we should just have it be hard. Like you just set your hard cap to begin with, and you can't change it. And if you want to, you should start a second validator, or you just have to redo the whole thing.
Well, I mean,
so you just have a responsible value to begin with, or you can bring it down. That's weird. You can bring it down, but you can't bring it up.
Well, I mean, there's still the question then, though. So the number of atoms is going to increase to do inflation, right? So is it as a percentage of the total atom supply, or is it an absolute number?
It's a percentage of. Oh, I see. Yeah, I'd probably say it's a percentage of the total of the like your relative amount. Like I think that makes sense, because that's the safety concern, right? And if you're just self-validated, or you're just self-delegating, you're not accepting others' delegations, then that will stay constant. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I guess it could go up, right? Because
if others are getting slashed, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, still some things to think about there, right? Because let's say others are getting slashed, right? So all of a sudden you have a bigger percentage, like you're above that limit. Like let's say even nobody's delegating to you. Now you're above that limit you set, you spend, and now what happens? And I think it is problematic to say, okay, is like one choice somebody makes as a limit, and they can never change it unless they start a second validator. Like that's
they can bring it down. They can if you
but
just
they can't increase it.
But they can't increase it. No, why would you want to increase it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, that can also.
I think it's fine.
Well,
I mean
theoretically, US validator can set a ridiculously high commission rate, right? So like the maximum commission rate is really high, but you start with an actual very low commission rate, and then people delegate to. So you have all the flexibility in the world, but you can only slowly increase the commission rate.
Yeah.
So, and that allows you to essentially set your commission rate at 100% initially, and people can still delegate to you, knowing that you can't immediately go on the next block go up to 100. You can only slowly increase it. So as a validator, you still have all the options.
Yeah. So
okay, and so and so we have a similar thing with the max number of atoms. It would be that okay, there is a hard max, there is a current max, but it can never go above that hard max.
Sure, we could do that.
Same. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if we want to do that. It might just be simpler to just have one number.
Yeah, but the one number is the problem then, right? Like, let's say I earn a disproportionate amount of atoms, my relative ownership increases a little bit, right? And now,
Brian, this is why I think we should have one number, because that one number is effectively the hard cap, right? I will never want to go over this much. Oh, but I'm saying you want to limit people in the short term, but then in the long term, you might not want to limit people. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, let's say I have like 500,000 atoms. I'm validating. I don't want other people to delegate to me. That I can have as a limit 500,000 atoms, or 500,000 divided by the atom supply. Now somebody else gets slashed, or I just make a bit more reward than others, so my percentage increases a bit. Now I get partially unbonded or something, or those atoms. Like I should be able to basically adjust that figure along with my.
Yeah. Let's have it so you can just. I think there could be two numbers. Yeah. Go on,
I don't
sorry.
think anyone should be able to set any max thing, because then if everyone sets that, it sets a limit to how many atoms can be staked at all. And the whole point of proof of stake, like I want anyone who wants to can partake in proof of stake.
Yeah, we shouldn't have a hard limit on the number of staked atoms.
No, I mean it would be the validators do it, voluntarily at whatever value they want, right?
Exactly, and they shouldn't be allowed to, because otherwise you could have.
The validators will just like make sure no one can ever delegate and partake in proof of stake. They're the only ones who can.
Yeah, exactly. So this allows you to fall governance cartels.
That makes no sense.
You vote people.
Brian, listen to this. This is Sunny Point made a really good point here. So all the validators are incentivized to keep that number low, because then if they keep that number low, what happens is that they will if the total number of bonded atoms is low, the inflation goes to that small group of people.
That makes no sense actually. If the other validators are doing that, then I'm going to accept delegations. Everybody's going to delegate to me. I charge a high fee. I'm better off. Awesome. This doesn't make sense. That's not the natural equilibrium what you guys are talking about.
No, but it is because of how much inflation goes towards the small group of validators.
No, but then any single party of them defecting is going to be much more profitable than the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's say we have 10 validators, right? And so then all of them keep their max stake very low. And then one of them defects, and now everyone has. Now that one person becomes a massive risk point because it contains so much of the voting power in the system.
But then what do the others do? They say, okay, now we're also going to increase. I mean,
not necessarily.
What's the benefits of putting a hard cap on map?
Also, I think this increases complexity by a lot. I would not go for this in the beginning.
Yeah, but you have to give validators a chance to say, okay, I don't want to have more than 5% of atoms delegated.
Why not? Why?
Mining pools still have that choice.
If they don't want that, then they should just completely unbond.
Yeah.
True.
That makes no sense.
No, but it's like, right, it's like you mentioned the Bitcoin example, like there's no protocol enforcement in Bitcoin that says you can't have more than 50% of the mining power.
No, but the mining pools have that option. The mining pool can say, okay, I'm not, you can't mine with me. Like you're basically saying there can be no such options for validator, which is crazy.
Why? Like why do they need that option?
I mean, first of all, okay, the whitelist does solve that problem partially, is that a validator shouldn't be forced to, use other people's atoms to validate the network. They should just be able to do it on their own account. I think that's
I disagree. I think they should be forced to.
So
just because we have a cap of 100 validators, yeah, I don't think you should be able to refuse delegation.
Exactly. So in Bitcoin, the difference is that even with zero setup, I can use my computer to mine. Like this is not the case here.
I mean, what you're saying is like some hypothetical example that is possible in a world that doesn't exist.
No, like
you can't mine anything with your computer.
Is mining.
Well, no, you can't. With your computer, you can't mine anything.
Okay, no, but it's unrelated.
No, it is participating in consensus, though.
No, not really. How are you participating in consensus?
I'm contributing hash rate to the network.
Yeah, but you're totally irrelevant. Nobody cares at least about you.
This is a better example, okay? I think we have to kind of think of stake as the ASIC, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have $100,000 worth of mining hardware, you're going to be able to do a little bit of mining, right? Whether it's with a pool or not. But in Cosmos, if you have $100,000 worth of atoms, you might not be able to do it.
No, but you guys are assuming here like a scenario where there's like some cartel of like 100 validators that all refuse people to delegate to them, and at the same time any one of them accepting people delegating them would be more profitable than the other 99. Like this is not a scenario that's plausible at all.
I'm not sure because we also increase the inflation rate as there's less bonded. So they'd have to like, maybe that one validator accepting delegation would, get more profit for himself, but he actually end up losing out because he's not earning as many atoms.
That's not true.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Actually, not true.
Yeah, I'm not sure. No, because if you decrease the percentage,
let's just say,
it's the same argument as before, right? So like there are a lot of states that we don't know how to argue about right now. If you feel strongly about it, write this up into a document and explain it, or in the GitHub issue and explain this in a lot of detail.
Yeah, I mean, I put open the GitHub issue on this.
So let's.
So my question, my only thing is I don't see the benefit of allowing validators to not be delegated. Okay,
I can tell you. I mean, this is very related to the white. I mean, actually, the aspect of not allowing other people to delegate to you, we can also solve with the whitelist, right? So,
what's the whitelist? Wait, sir, what's a whitelist?
That a validator can say only addresses that are whitelisted, that the validated whitelist can delegate to me.
Oh, I don't think we should have that either.
I think that's absolutely necessary.
I don't think we should have that either.
Yeah, but it's absolutely critical for sure. I make any bet that in a lot of countries you will not be able to run validators without this.
Maybe that's okay.
So I don't think so. I think we have a scenario here, right, where you can have a wide diversity of validators if you allow whitelisting. If not, I think we have a scenario where there's a high risk that you have basically a bunch of anonymous dubious validators run from offshore locations, right?
I like that.
And I think those should exist. I think it will be good to have the offshore anonymous validators. But I think it would be very dangerous if that's the only type of validators there is. So it should totally be possible to run a validator, have anybody delegate to him. You don't know who the people are of the company, you don't know where they are. The validator has no idea who's delegated to them. Like that validator should exist. Only validator that exists, the network's fucked.
Should we only? I don't know. What would happen if we only had anonymous validators? What would that mean?
Oh, I love only anonymous validators.
Me too.
I like it too, but it is why
resist government crackdown.
Well,
Exactly.
so I think you make cartels and collusion much more likely, right? Because you really, I mean, if the parties are known and they collude, well, you can go after them and you.
How are you going after them?
Well, the
Well,
reputation.
it's illegal entities. You can sue them. Their reputation.
For what?
They're
Under
known
what
people.
law is this illegal? Under what legislation are you starting to sue them for participating in a worldwide consensus?
You can have contracts. So like that's the idea, is that if you're a validator, the whole idea of a whitelist, or one of the ideas of whitelist, is that you would be able to, make like out of band contracts that are legally binding. You could do that. So it could be in the contract, is like if I'm colluding, then like I'm
Exactly.
doable.
But the problem with the real world contract is like, how do you prove and maintain
It's not your
that
problem.
you still
That's
own
the
the
problem.
keys, that you still haven't sold the keys? Like, you essentially make a contract between an address. Like, you don't make it between two legal entities. You make it between an address and a legal entity.
Just what we did in the Cosmos fundraiser, right? How did this fundraiser work? If we hadn't had an ability for people to actually sign the terms, do you really think we would have been able to do the fundraiser? No way. Like, that's critical. It's critical that you say, okay, this is what we commit to. Like, this is foundation. Here it's located. This is all the things, the risks you enter, etc.
Yeah,
right?
but so anyone could have still participated in the fundraiser without signing it, just by sending a raw transaction.
Could you? I guess so.
Yeah, of
Also,
course.
I don't think
it's
the
a
legal-
transaction.
The legal stuff doesn't matter because it was all enforced, or like in consensus, because it's all enforced through the code.
What do you mean? What's enforced through the code?
Any sort of, you can write a smart contract to do anything that instead of needing a legal contract.
Where? On Cosmos?
Yeah, on Ethermint.
Eventually,
No,
we'll
you
be able to.
can't.
Yeah.
But not at launch, and even that's convoluted.
Mm.
And what do you mean? Can you? How would you even do that? Like, so you would? I mean, the atoms have to be like on the hub, bonded. Like, how can you make a smart contract on Ethermint that affects those atoms? That doesn't make sense to me.
You can stake. You can put up something else as collateral, and
Yeah, that makes no sense.
No, you can collateralize it. That works.
Yeah, you can say, hey, I'm putting up $1 million of Ether in this smart contract, and if you prove that I'm breaking this contract, you get all my Ether.
Yeah, and that means, yeah, but nobody's going to do that because that has a huge capital requirement cost.
Good. Exactly, and that's the whole point. I don't want people to be making out of band delegation and stuff.
But Sonny, you look completely detached from reality. Like this, like if we have a network where this is impossible, I mean,
Yeah.
we are now, Mayor and I, are starting to work on this validator thing. I am 98% sure that lawyers will be like, you guys need to have a terms of service with the delegators. Otherwise, like, you guys are running huge liability, huge risks. You should not do it. Like, I am pretty sure that's going to be the outcome. And
I'm pretty sure that would have been the outcome if you had asked people about Bitcoin in the beginning too.
So if the protocol doesn't allow it, I think a lot of people would say, okay, we can't run a validator. And then who are you left with? The people who don't care, right? The people who say, like, I don't give a fuck. And who are these? I mean, they will be less professional.
Brian, I've spoken to a lot of different people that want to run validators, and literally no one besides you has mentioned this concern.
Yeah, because they're not thinking far ahead enough, but they will.
Thinking fine. A validator, like when somebody's delegating to me, and my non-performance in some way can result in the loss of their funds, I actually think a validator is going to be a fiduciary. I actually think no matter what what the protocol says, what we think about it, many governments are going to call this role a fiduciary because it is like a fiduciary. It's like if I invest money in a hedge fund, I take a risk that the investment manager could lose money.
That's the thing. You're not investing money in a hedge fund here. You're putting virtual ASICs to work through another guy. Like that's the big conceptual difference.
So there are like so many nations across the world, right? Many nations are going to interpret this as the validator being a fiduciary, and you can't stop it, right? Like there's so many legal systems, and I think like Cosmos has to be general enough that it can fit any legal system.
Yeah. Maybe you know what I'm thinking. This is just a crazy idea, because I think it's important to have anonymous validators as well, right? For the robustness of the system. You know, we don't want a whole bunch of identified validators. The whole system taken down. Why don't we just set a ratio, right? You know, 50% of validators can have whitelist. 50%.
No, that makes no sense.
Why not?
This is like being. I mean, I think you guys. What's weird here too is the idea that like I mean, a whitelist basically says validators choose how to run their business. They can accept anybody. They don't have to do they don't have to have a contract. They don't have to have terms. People can be anonymous, right? Or they can do it a totally different way, right? You say, okay, people can run any kind of validator, and you're not being prescriptive, right? Like here, I think if you say you can't have a whitelist, it's being very, very prescriptive about how you have to run it. If you say, okay, only some can have, like being prescriptive, I mean, we shouldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. So it's perfect. You can run a validator however you want. You can use the whitelist. You don't have to use the whitelist. But I don't want you I don't want you on the network if the whole network is going with whitelists, and I don't need any more people with whitelists. Cap it at that.
I mean, I think the dynamic is just like this, right? So let's say now various people have validators and are running whitelists. Well, it means that some people will not want to delegate to that, right? Because they don't want to have this relationship. And well, that increases the attractiveness of running a validator that doesn't have a whitelist, right? So it's fine, right? So that would just drive up demand and make it more attractive to do something offshore or to do something that's like behind Tor, or I don't know. Or
yeah, we could let the market decide, you know, the rate. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. What are the impacts of a whitelist? So can validators start coming after delegators for unbonding? Can you describe that in your terms of service?
Ooh, that's bad. Of course, you can do anything.
What happens? It's yeah. So, like, what happens if? What happens if a delegator loses their key and like then starts overriding the vote of the validator? Can you, terms of services, describe that you can't override the votes of a validator? Like, I think this puts huge issues on like
guys.
Dude, this is totally out of hand, right? It's their problem.
Brian, I got a question.
No, this is the network's problem, even if it's out of band. And like the problem with the whitelist is suddenly we have something out of band that influences the security of our proof of stake network. Like something that we don't.
This is true in any case. It's true also if you don't have a whitelist, because then actually it's much worse, because then all kinds of legal things all of a sudden have dramatic implications because you can't.
No, because that was what the network is designed to prevent, like that no one jurisdiction is able to fuck with it.
Okay, Brian, I got a question for you.
Sure.
What is it specifically that you want? You want the whitelist, if I'm interpreting this correctly, okay? You want the whitelist so you can have a terms of service, right?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I want the whitelist because, terms of service, one. I want the whitelist to allow people to run like a variety of type of validator setups. You know, for example, a setup where you say like, okay, let's say a bunch of AIB employees want to like run a validator together. They don't want to validate. They don't have other people delegate to them because that like also it's just added responsibility, right? So you may want to be like, okay, I don't want to do that because I don't want to have that, you know, that weight, right? It's just like you have funds that are just managing their own money, right? Because they don't want
like, there's no added weight. Like if people are willing to delegate, the protocol exactly describes what happens if I fuck up.
there's added responsibility.
No, why?
Because if you, Rachel, and a bunch of other people say, okay, we're gonna run a validator together, if you guys mess up, it's only you guys that lose. But if you
and
all of a
everyone else
sudden
knew exactly what they've got, like, it's not like I tricked someone in delegating to me. It's like you delegated, you knew the exact risk behind this. Like there's no added weight for me.
well, for me, there would certainly added weight. If it's just my own atoms versus like third people I don't know, of course that's a different responsibility.
I completely disagree.
Seriously?
Wait, why? Yeah, I mean, there's like legal risk if like, you know, that person can see you now, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's why I'm also fully. That's why I think why most of the validators should run fully anonymously.
Yeah, and maybe the
Maybe
other.
so, but that's not our decision to make. That's a decision to make of the validators.
You know, we could enforce it only for anonymous validators, and anybody who wants to do something else can just run out of band contract. Like, there's nothing stopping anybody from accepting atoms under a legal agreement that they will. Like, you can have a completely out of band contract, right? That's enforced by a different protocol. You can just say,
you can't do that if you can't whitelist the addresses.
No, of course you can, because you can just accept, like, it's like, I'll send you my atoms, and if you and since your reputation's at stake, I know that if you don't abide by our legal contract, I can sue you.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's ugly. I mean, that is terrible,
course it's
because
ugly.
then you. I mean, actually, I think that's a very good point, because that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't allow whitelisting. It's exactly that. It's going to happen is to say, okay, you have to actually send me your atoms, then I delegate, because otherwise I can't enforce any of these things. I think you're totally right. That is what's going to happen without a whitelist.
So
And that's terrible, I think. Because now it basically means you're giving up all of the beauty of delegation, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
for the
that
people who do
you fully trust that party then, right? They could steal your atoms. They could do whatever they want.
you can sue them.
Yeah, it comes at a
Yeah,
trade-off.
because no, once you give them the atoms out of band like that, you make a legal contract to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really ugly.
Uh,
I mean, this is terrible.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like giving up something
yeah.
beautiful that you can create for something really this ugly hack that dramatically reduces the security of the network. It's it undermines the security of atom holders.
So I like, you know, I buy Brian's points. I think the only thing I would like to see for that to work is I think we need to remove the cap of 100 validators.
Yeah,
Like,
we can't
Sure,
do
if
sure.
you're
that.
an
I have
unlimited
no problems
validator
with
set,
that.
we can do that. Fine.
Sure,
I think
let's remove the cap.
What?
Whoa, Jay
That's
is
another 3 years of research into consensus.
There's a reason. There's a technical reason why the cap is there.
Yeah.
Right? We can't just,
Well, I mean the cap, or
Yeah.
increase the cap, or I don't know. I mean, sure, the cap I don't think is
the cap will increase with time.
right.
As you
I
get
mean,
better
100
consensus.
validators is still a lot, right? There will be a significant amount of diversity in validators. So I don't think people will have a problem finding a validator, you know, that they want, like with the kind of setup they want.
It's also about like how do people think about the network, right? Like, are we a network that has terms and services to participate in it, or is it a completely open network? And I'm
No,
honestly for the
network
completely
will
open
have
network.
services. It's just like if you're a mining pool, I'm sure some of the mining pools will have terms and services, right? They
I've
will say
never
like,
seen a single mining pool with terms and services.
have you ever mined?
I have.
Yeah, I don't Bitcoin mine, so I don't know.
I don't know. I
Because
would
the term,
like
the mining pools, like it's essentially a URL, right? Like you only input a URL into your miner, and then it happens. It's like there's nothing else. So you can take anyone else's URL.
I think it's fine, guys. I think this is fine. I think it's fine to have the terms and services in here if the network was constructed in, like, if the matured network really had a good community of both people who wanted terms and services and people who didn't want terms of services and more anonymity. I think that's fine, but I'm scared of the possibility of like all the validators going with terms and services.
Yeah, exactly. Like, by the way,
Right.
so like if
we
could totally implement this through governance, and by the way, 100% okay with it.
No, I mean, so first of all, terms of, so there is various use cases for whitelist, right? Terms of service is just one of them. Now, also terms of service doesn't mean no anonymity. I mean, in our fundraiser, Cosmos fundraisers, there are basically terms, right? But there was still anonymity. Now, I think it should be very possible. I mean, I think my desire, like for our validator, would be, I mean, of course, we'll have to look into and do more research, is I would like there to be terms, right? I think that's really needed. But I would prefer if there's anonymity, right? I prefer that it's something similar to the Cosmos fundraiser, where basically someone cryptographically signs these terms, the address gets whitelisted, and now they're delegated without us having to know anything about them. Like, that would be my preferred thing.
Do it all automatic.
Huh?
You could do it all automatically. You could even just put the fucking terms in like a field on chain.
Yeah, I don't think that's, I mean, first of all, that again, I think is bad, because if you do that on chain, it's like we're being opinionated. There should be terms, right? If you have like, okay, terms and conditions, and someone doesn't have it, like, we shouldn't do that. Then you're saying like the network is almost making a statement, we accept there to be terms. I don't think that we should do that,
Well,
right?
that's what we're doing if we allow a whitelist.
No. If we allow whitelist, we just say validators can run the business the way they want. They can do terms, they can not do terms, they can do whatever they want.
They don't have to use the whitelist.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
They don't have to use the whitelist, of course not.
I'm just really worried that the 100 validators are all gonna use like.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be as
So,
diverse.
I think this is also like in 6 months, this is like if the validator set wants to vote this in and the community wants to vote this in, we should go through governance. But like initially, I think the whitelist is too. No, I think initially we shouldn't be that opinionated about it. Like if the community in week 2 wants to implement this, go to governance.
No, this is being less opinionated about it.
Yeah, I agree.
How's it being less opinionated to allow? Okay, because check this out. Here's another. It's like the exact same dilemma as before, right? Like if there's a limited validator set and a lot of validators are choosing to have whitelists, then fucking you can't delegate, right? Like if you don't want to have to deal with that,
What
and
do you mean you can't delegate?
What?
What do you mean
have to
can't?
you have to agree to some of these terms if you're going to delegate, and maybe you don't want to have.
Just delegate to somebody who doesn't have this.
Yeah, but what if that doesn't happen?
If there's 100 validators,
I don't know.
Seriously,
What
if
happens if
all
all
of them are
100
gonna do that?
validators?
Let's just guys, I'm okay with it, but I would be more okay with it if we enforced an amount of like if we just say we can't have more than 50% whitelist validators.
that makes no sense to me.
Well,
Yeah, I
no,
like the idea
like,
from the.
Here's the point as well, right? So so there's some people, right? They will run a validator, and like let's say there's no whitelist, like no whitelisting possible. Okay, people run a validator, right? Now, if whitelist is possible, all of those can still run the validator in the exact same way. You don't have to change anything, but you also add the option for other people to run a validator in somewhat different ways. Like it strictly just expands the option of the network, right? It doesn't restrict anybody's choices or decisions.
I just don't want to have to hard fork the network when everybody is using whitelists. That's all. Because I'll do it.
Do you think what do you think is the legal risk here? Like, I don't know, I want to talk to like an actual lawyer about like, do they think that delegation systems are gonna cause like, what are the legal implications of these?
I mean, I think it's, so yeah, we'll certainly look into that. I mean, I also talk with Jay, you know, I think we may make some proposals to the foundation to fund some research and basically looking at that in different jurisdictions. I think it's something as simple as saying like, okay, you know, if we mess up, somebody tries to sue us, like, you know, this is, you know, these are some kind of rules about like, you know, jurisdiction and things like that. It's just like, I mean, look at the Cosmos fundraiser. Look at a lot of these fundraisers. They all have like some terms.
Basically, like if
Ethereum fundraiser had terms, right?
Guys, there's another really important point here about the whitelist. Is that if you have a whitelist, then that means that there's you know, it's assumed that there's the possibility that the terms could be violated, which means somebody would need to be taken off the whitelist, which now means that validators can, in a sense, censor their delegators.
Yeah. All right, that's a good point.
What if we put in the Constitution that like the delegators are taking on full liability for like anything that their validators do?
No, man.
No, but
and so that way
this is no, but
you can't do that.
Right.
That's legally going to be worthless.
why? Really?
Because I mean, first of all, I really don't think that's the role of the network to do something like that. There should be between delegators and validators. And second, I mean, there's all kinds of different countries and different rules and different. And again, I think it's about diversity, right? You don't want to have like network level terms or network level things. It's just that validators should basically be able to have freedom for how they want to structure this thing.
Yeah,
that
so
increases diversity.
What happens now? Okay, so I now delegate. I agree to some terms and conditions. I'm now on a whitelist. How can I get removed? Like I now breach the terms and conditions. How do I get removed from the whitelist?
Well, I mean, as a delegator, you wouldn't necessarily be able to breach terms and conditions. Like, how would you breach terms and conditions? You just delegate.
I don't know. Like, I can this is an arbitrary contract you're describing, right? Like, as a validator, you can say, if you ever vote against me, you in breach of terms and conditions, and I can sue you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, as a delegator, you probably say no thanks to that one.
Yeah, but then you hide it behind 100 pages, and now you have terms and services that.
Yeah, but then that's the problem of the validator. I mean, nobody's gonna. They're not gonna be able to enforce this anywhere, probably.
Okay, so no, but theoretically, right? So, like, what happens if?
I don't think it's necessary.
So assuming that you only ever get onto the whitelist once, right? So it's an immutable, append only whitelist, right? That's what the assumption is.
Well, you could maybe remove somebody, but then it's only they can't like re-delegate to them, but they don't get unbonded or something like that. Does that make sense?
I don't know. Like I haven't thought about this yet.
Okay, I gotta go, guys. But I think that on the basis of how contentious this is, I think it should maybe go to governance. But either way, it will make sense to compile.
Well, no, you can push it to governance, but it's like, what's the default? What do we build as the original?
Say that again. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the question. I think the original would be without terms, like without the whitelist, because it's an add-on.
I don't know. I'm actually kind of on Brian's side on this one, where like I think the whitelist does make sense.
Actually, next question then. So I now have signed terms and conditions. What happens? My validator breaches this. Like, how do I prove that it was me who signed it?
See you guys.
Well, you have the cryptographic key, right?
So
I mean, anyway, that's not our problem. Like, that's the problem.
No, this will be a real problem now.
And the validator.
This is now a problem of a delegator. Like, we have to explain to a delegator what these things mean.
No, because that's not our problem. Like, the whitelist doesn't say anything. It doesn't say anything about terms, right? It could not be used like terms at all. Like the terms, if such terms are done, it's a a contract or something between the delegator and the validator, the network doesn't care about it. It's not our problem. Like how courts are going to enforce this stuff, not our problem. We shouldn't have to think about it.
Yeah, I could just create a validator and say I only want my friends to delegate. There's no like terms and services here. Just like.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I still think
really after that as well.
Like whitelist things.
I'm just
See you
really
guys later.
it's gonna turn into an oligarchy.
So, yeah, so I think we'll do this again next week at the same time. An hour and a half seems enough.
Okay. I really think this is going to turn into an oligarchy if we have like whitelists, but I also see that why the whitelists are super important.
Yeah.
I think like the problem is if there's no whitelist, let's say we run a validator, somebody delegates to us, we don't know what country they are from, right? And there's no terms of service between us. Let's say we get slashed. Now that person could sue us in the court of some nation, right? Like because the jurisdiction hasn't been defined. So that person could sue us in like the court of some nation. And that some nation, by their laws, we might be at fault. So we kind of have like
that can happen anyway though, like because any judicial system can still decide that the terms and services were invalid and didn't apply.
So in the terms of service, like in the terms of service, we will specify, right? Like
yeah, exactly. And then I go to nation X and say, I've signed this. Do you think this is valid? And then they say no, and then I can still sue you, like, right?
no. So in the terms of service, it's like any disputes arising out of this agreement will be settled in the courts of this nation.
Yeah. No, terms of services have a settlement jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like I could be based in a jurisdiction where these kind of terms of services are completely irrelevant, and I can still sue you. So, for example, I'm based, let's say hypothetically, I'm based in country X. Country X writes into its foundation terms and like everything that relates to my citizens can be prosecuted in my jurisdiction. I can still sign those terms and services, and I can still prosecute you under my local jurisdiction, even though the terms and services might be something else.
If a country were to do that, then basically Apple, Facebook, all of the big companies wouldn't serve that country. It would basically become an Iran.
Yeah, I'm just saying the terms and services are not absolute.
No,
like you're portraying them as very absolute. They're not.
If I'm Apple and like here comes a small country, I don't know, let's think Sri Lanka does that, right? If I'm Apple, then for me it's like, okay, I can serve these people in Sri Lanka, I can serve all of these IP addresses, but it might be the case that I'm going to have many class action lawsuits in that country. So logical thing I'd do is I won't serve Sri Lanka.
Yeah, actually, best example is the US and like the investor thing, right? Like I can block all American IPs, and if American people still do business with me, I'm still liable under American law. This is exactly the same case. Like my terms and services could have said that no Americans is allowed to invest, but they still invest in it. Like,
no.
I'm pretty sure you can find a judge somewhere in the States that doesn't give a shit about these terms and services.
No, but that's the whole point of the terms of services and like the SAFT and everything, which is like, so that way, now if an American partakes in this ICO, they're the ones who are liable, not the runners of the sale. That's the whole point of the terms and services. Because as the person to partake in the ICO, I'm signing saying I am not an American citizen, and so if I break that, then in fact it's like me who's like liable, not them.
I'd be surprised if the entire US judicial system agrees with that.
Yeah. So tell me one thing. So forget all that. So Adrian, would you be willing to run? So there's two questions, right? Like so, let's imagine two scenarios. Scenario one is you're looking to delegate your atoms. Will you realistically delegate your atoms to a validator that is anonymous?
Very probable because they probably have a much lower, like they have a much lower attack surface from a technical standpoint. Since all the social engineering attacks against them come extremely hard to execute.
I would delegate to an anonymous validator that has a high amount of self-bond.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if they can signal skin in the game, you guys will delegate to them. Even if you don't know.
Like simply for this reason, right? Like I know that you're running the validator. Now I start looking into your social network graph and start figuring out where you live. And now I can start targeting people. I can do email phishing because I know your name and I know the company you're working for. Like an entire class of attacks goes away for anonymous validators.
Also, there's something as anonymous reputation where pseudonymous reputation, where for example, if Satoshi Nakamoto suddenly set up a Bitcoin mining pool, of course I'd love to be part of that. He's still anonymous, but he still has reputation as Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay, fair enough. So the second question is, so scenario 2, will you run a validator that will take anonymous delegators? Like not anonymous is not the right word. Will you run a validator with no terms of service?
Yeah. What I would do is I'd run an here's what I would do, right? I'm sure all of us will have whenever we sign the code release or whatever, right? All of our public keys are known. I'll create a zero knowledge proof that I am one of the devs from All in Bits, but I'm not going to tell people which one. And then I'll use that to bootstrap my validator.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it's cool, right? I still get to be plausible deniability, but I still get to bootstrap our reputation.
See, the thing with plausible deniability is now with All in Bits, you 20-25 employees, right? So in the worst case, your anonymity set, your pseudonymity set is those 20 or 25 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The feds or whoever can easily crack that anonymity set. This is I mean, I wouldn't even call that an anonymous validator.
No, but generally, I wouldn't probably be even too concerned of running a known validator.
Keep in mind
under the assumption that the protocol clearly specifies the contract between me and my delegators.
Yeah. No. Also, the thing is, it's not about the feds figuring it out. It's about the delegators knowing who to sue. The feds aren't going to go after anyone. It's unless they have a case brought to them.
So let's forget feds. Any detective worth their salt will figure this out. If you give him a list of 20 people and my guy is one of these 20, then the attributes of
let's be honest, it's actually pretty easy to figure out where a validator is, because I don't think validators are going to be running over Tor, for example. Right? You can probably track them down.
No, but they'll run behind proxy nodes, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You guys are willing to run totally anonymous delegators. I don't know. I would worry about the legal risk somehow. Because I feel the difference between a mining pool and a validator is night and day. If I'm a mining pool operator and I screw up, most would lose as the miners is hours of effort, right? Out here, if I'm running a validator and I screw up and you are delegated to me, you could lose millions of dollars, right? Cosmos becomes a big network, $10 billion network or whatever. You could lose millions of dollars. Am I going to take the risk of losing somebody else's millions of dollars without legal protection? I don't know. I would be super uncomfortable.
Still have some legal protection, right? You've still probably a limited company, whatever, that's actually running the validator. And lastly, the protocol is very, very clearly specified. And if I delegate to you, I assume I did my due diligence on that you're safe. And like, if you're not safe, then it's like my fault for delegating to you.
So how does the protocol specify that? So it's just a transaction, right? Like, as when you delegate it to me, it's just you make.
It's like,
I mean,
yeah,
so
but I think that transaction very clearly specifies it. Like, it's like in Bitcoin, like you don't no one can sue the receiving end of a transaction because I forgot that I shouldn't send people money because I did a wrong transaction.
this is different from receiving money.
We should all watch.
You are managing money when you are.
Continue.
No, you get virtual, like you're managing virtual infrastructure. You're not managing money. You're managing virtual ASICs.
Think of a different interpretation. When you send me your atoms, like when you delegate your atoms, let's say the inflation rate is, I don't know, 5%, and I give you back 4%. I can argue I'm managing your money. Like,
No, you're not.
You give me the money, I'm giving you a 4% yield.
No, I'm delegating to you virtualized hardware. It's like a mining pool, except that the ASICs are virtualized.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna fly in every jurisdiction, to be honest. Because like it looks like a traditional investment contract, right? Like the performance of your investment is dependent on me, a person, right, or a company. There is an entrepreneur that you can isolate legally very easily, right? You're doing this in the expectation of profit, right? When you're delegating to me, you are expecting that 4%. That is the expectation of profit.
No, but okay, you have the exact same argument with the mining pool. Like I buy an ASIC and I put that ASIC to work on a mining pool in the expectation that I get some fee rewards from running that ASIC for your mining pool. The only difference, it's a virtualized thing.
Yeah, so I think the hard part here is when you point to a particular mining pool, the most you can lose out of the incompetence of that mining pool is 2 or 3 hours worth of effort, or 4 or 5 hours worth of effort. Out here, you could lose all your funds. You're going to go to court much more easily in the Cosmos case than in the Bitcoin miner case. Because this could be all your funds, right? It could be $1 million.
That might be true, but I think then honestly, you didn't understand the system. Like, this is like a protection against stupid people, essentially.
Like what? What is a protection against stupid people?
Like, first of all, you should never delegate all, like, in most cases, you should probably never delegate all your virtualized ASICs or atoms to one person at a time, right? So
if all of the validators are anonymous, I actually don't know if two seemingly...
No, just because it's anonymous doesn't mean there's not a clear identity. Like, you just can't link it to real-world identity. Like, it could be another reputation-based system where you link it to, well, Satoshi's private key. You link it to an anonymous key-based identity.
But in theory, those two identities could be the same person, no? How like, so all I have is 2 public keys, and these public keys have taken a set of actions in the past. I can see that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like, you will always have this.
They're not the same person.
Okay, but that's like arguing someone could have bootstrapped a second birth certificate since birth, and like this can now be 2 people at the same time.
It can be.
Yeah, so like it's the same kind of level of protection then.
So like in theory, you could have delegated to 2 or 3 different people, and they could be the same. You don't know. They could be different. They could be the same. You don't know. And you could lose all your money. You could be just trusting like one person, and you could lose all your money.
And I think if that happens on a, actually no, I don't want to say that. If that happened with hard forking, I think it's a problem. Like, let's write this down more in the GitHub issue to discuss this further, like with pros and cons. Yeah, because I have to go in like 3 minutes as well.
Yeah, sure. No, let's.
It's interesting. Let's continue the discussion actually next week.
How would you feel about the opposite thing? No whitelist, but a validator. So a delegator can delegate to a validator, but the validator has the validator can basically like kick out a delegator. Like you can delegate to me, but at a later point in time, I can.
No, that is you can like same kind of censorship issues.
I have to leave really quickly, but take a look on the side. I put Tim Swanson from like Ripple. He actually gave a talk like earlier this week at Berkeley about like the legal risk of like even Bitcoin mining pools. And so I imagine the Cosmos stuff is even worse. So yeah, I mean it's the first video on that page.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool guys. Let's continue this in 1 week.
Cool.
Same time, same place.
Yeah. See you.
See you guys soon. Bye-bye.